Batman is one of the greatest superheroes of all time. However, I don't think we have the great version of this character that we could. Don't get me wrong, there have been some great renditions before. First one was Adam West, and he was phenomenal, but there was no difference between his Bruce Wayne and his Batman. Michael Keaton was great, but he was often pushed to the side in his own movies. Hopefully he'll improve with The Flash coming next year. Val Kilmer was exceedingly dull. George Clooney could have made a good Bruce Wayne, but the writing just sucked. Kevin Conroy voiced Batman in Batman the Animated Series and its subsequent film, Mask of the Phantasm. I've only seen Mask of the Phantasm, and he was pretty good. Christian Bale was an absolutely incredible Bruce Wayne, but let's be honest, he was a lousy Batman. Ben Affleck should have been awesome, but the writing was just so abysmal in so many ways. Will Arnett was pretty funny. David Mazouz from Gotham, a highly underrated show, was excellent. And we're getting Robert Pattinson in The Batman, which has all the potential to be the best Batman movie ever, as long as Warner Bros. Doesn't screw it up. It is legitimately one of my most anticipated movies of all time. Now, after the Batman and its possible franchise wraps up, there's going to be another version of the character. I'd like to see a TV show with time for character development and longer storylines to be adapted, like some of Batman's most famous comics. So over the next several weeks, I, the film watcher, shall be recasting Batman and a large number of his allies and, most importantly, villains. But today, I will be focusing on Batman, Alfred Pennyworth, Commissioner Gordon, Lucius Fox, and Leslie Thompkins. So let's do this. First up is Alfred Pennyworth. Now, I've really enjoyed every version of Alfred. Michael Gough definitely leaned to the old English butler vibe, but he was very good nonetheless. Of course, Michael Caine was fantastic and the best version of the character. Jeremy Irons was great, as was Ralph Fiennes. So Alfred has to be many things. He's a father figure to Bruce Wayne and the most consistent element in his life. He has to be very smart and be able to help Bruce with his investigations. I like the Gotham version where Alfred is kind of a badass. He shouldn't do as much fighting here, but he should still feel like he can hold his own. Alfred was actually a soldier in the British SAS in his youth, and the actor has to reflect that. The actor should be able to lean into the comedic side of the character. Also, he should be about 70, as I'm setting up a universe in which Batman is in his late 30s. The first name I had down was James Earl Jones. He'd be amazing, but unfortunately, he's 90 years old. If Batman were in like his mid to late 50s, he'd work fine, but with a Batman in his late 30s, it just wouldn't work. Another name was Kelsey Grammer, but I don't know if he could do the dramatic stuff. Alfred Molina is another one, but he was just missing something. If Ewan McGregor were 15 years older, he'd be my main choice, but he's only 50, which simply isn't realistic. So I eventually settled on Geoffrey Rush. So he's done comedic roles before, like in Finding Nemo, in which he played Nigel the Pelican, and even in Pirates of the Caribbean. He was also in The Book Thief, a fairly underrated book and film. He gets some really depressing scenes in that movie, and in my opinion, he did a great job and could handle similar scenes here. He's also turning 70 in a couple weeks. He's done action before, as seen in Pirates of the Caribbean. Next is Commissioner Gordon. Now, I like the versions of Gordon in the 60s show and in the Burton Schumacher films, but he wasn't great or anything. Gordon in Gotham was painfully inconsistent and sounded like he was trying to sound like Bale's Batman half the time. Even J.K. Simmons, who should have been amazing, suffered from lame writing. Speaking of J.K. Simmons, I just watched the movie Whiplash this morning, and it's amazing. Oh yeah, and Gary Oldman was incredible. This guy has blown every other Jim Gordon out of the water. He's awesome. So Gordon's a very interesting character. He's one of the few officers in Gotham who actually puts in the work to make it a better place. He fully trusts Batman, mainly because he's just learned to go with whatever Batman wants to do, because, the man gets results. He's also a family man. He has a wife and kids that he needs to look out for. Even so, he still wouldn't hesitate to put his life on the line for just about anybody. He sees the corruption and fear that's overtaking Gotham, but he's not some naive dolt who thinks he can stop it himself. He rose to a position of power to make large-scale change. Now, there are plenty of people I considered. Carl Urban, Lawrence Fishburne, and Bradley Cooper being the main ones. Cooper would be amazing, but like Ewan McGregor, he's simply too young. Bryan Cranston's name has been thrown out there, but I haven't seen him in enough to make an accurate decision. So my choice is Denzel Washington. A multi-Academy Award-winning actor, Denzel Washington is one of the best actors of his generation. His first Oscar was for Glory, in which he played a young and reckless soldier. He was amazing in that film, but what I'm really looking at is his performance as Herman Boone in Remember the Titans, a vastly underrated film. He played the authoritative and the heartfelt so well. He had some great emotional monologues in the film, and he played a man that was very devoted to his family. He could play every side of Gordon with ease. He's 66, which works well for Gordon. He's also done plenty of action-based roles, and recently, which means he could absolutely pull up that side of the role. He's an incredibly versatile actor who can take some very interesting choices with this character. Moving on, we have Lucius Fox. I thought Morgan Freeman was great in this role, and Chris Chalk from Gotham was solid when, he was actually on screen. So Lucius Fox is the head of Wayne Enterprises, or co-head sometimes with Bruce. He's sort of like an uncle to him and represents the company in his life. Fox has to be extremely sophisticated and intelligent. He has a very measured voice, never raises it, doesn't really get angry, he always keeps his cool. He's very technologically minded as well. Like with Ewan McGregor and Bradley Cooper, there's a great actor for this character who's younger, and that's Sterling K. Brown. But unfortunately at 44, he's just too young. So I decided to cast Andre Braugher. He actually appeared in Glory alongside Denzel Washington, but I'm more looking at Brooklyn Nine-Nine, in which he played Captain Raymond Holt. Now, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a sitcom, so if we wanted to lean into Lucius for some levity, he could do that very well. A lot of his comedy in that show comes from his deep bass voice and sophisticated speech. However, he also gets some really solid emotional moments in the series and acts them perfectly. This guy has way too much talent to have appeared in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Yeah, that movie sucks. Anyway, he has an epic voice and all the gravitas in the world. I'm confident he could pull up this role with grace. Then we have Leslie Thompkins, the only character I've cast that hasn't appeared in any Batman movies, only in television. I don't mind the version in Gotham. I like that they had her take over the Narrows in season 4, but she also had a really tedious and uninteresting relationship with Gordon. Leslie in the comics is very different. She's a doctor who works alongside Thomas Wayne. Hey, why can't Thomas Wayne be a doctor and co-owner of her company? She helps Bruce cope with the loss of his parents when he is a boy, and is there for him in some capacity when he's an adult. I don't necessarily think she should be a main character, more of a recurring role. She's very maternal, but very intelligent. She's a highly skilled doctor, the best in all of Gotham. I went through plenty of actresses for this role, from Emma Thompson to Julie Walters to Emily Watson, and they'd be very good, but I think there's one person who tops them, and that is Joan Cusack. She has plenty of experience in roles like this. Like with Lucius, I think she could provide some levity, and Cusack did exactly that in the Toy Story films as Jessie. She also played a maternal figure to the Baudelaires in a series of unfortunate events. She wouldn't be as optimistic in this, but she has a very similar energy. I'm really looking at The Perks of Being a Wallflower, in which she played a doctor. She had maybe 5 minutes of screen time, but she was really good. I felt like she always knew exactly what she was talking about, and that's what we need for Leslie Thompkins. Lastly, we need the Dark Knight, the Caped Crusader, the Batman. So Batman's probably my favorite superhero of all time. As I mentioned before, he's had some very good incarnations and some very bad ones. There's so many different facets to this character. The actor needs to play Bruce Wayne, the public figure, a billionaire playboy who doesn't pay much attention to the inner workings of his company. He doesn't need to be a complete idiot, but he shouldn't be the sharpest bulb in the ocean either. Then there's the real Bruce Wayne, the extremely intelligent, extremely analytical, extremely observant, amazing detective that can basically solve anything. This Bruce Wayne is an absolute genius. He is the world's greatest detective. So he has to do detective things, looking into clues and leads, interviewing and interrogating witnesses, what have you. And then you have Batman, the fierce, dark, mysterious vigilante of the night. He does not kill people under any circumstances. He is, however, very aggressive in his techniques. He will hurt people as much as he can without killing them. Not only is he an absolute genius, he's also one of the most prime physical specimens in the world. He trains on an almost constant basis, lifting weights, doing every exercise imaginable. In the comics, he can bench about 800 pounds, but that's just not realistic. He should be able to bench maybe 500 pounds, which is slightly less unrealistic. He's also trained in just about every form of combat there is. He leaves Gotham for like 12 years when he's about 20 years old. He's very technologically minded, like Lucius. He and Lucius actually build the Batmobile together. So we need an actor who's versatile enough to fulfill the incredibly demanding acting requirements of this role, as well as someone who meets the intense physical requirements. I'm in like 2% body fat. The actor needs to at least be able to get to such a place physically. We also need somebody who has experience in action, who can do most of their own and has experience following the steps. I legitimately have a top 10 list of actors who would make a great Batman. Among that number is Michael Fassbender, Idris Elba, Josh Brolin, Pedro Pascal, Ron Perlman, Alec Baldwin, a comedic version, but still, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Luke Evans. And I stand by every single one of those choices, but I've had the same choice since when I started this project, which was almost 2 years ago. The best I can come up with is Adam Driver. He's an incredibly versatile actor with a number of roles that 100% convinced me that he'd be perfect for this one in pretty much every way. He can be a little over-the-top goofy for when he's playing public figure Bruce Wayne. He can be extremely intelligent and pull off being the world's greatest detective, as we've seen in the Star Wars sequels, and no, I'm not kidding, I like those movies. Plus, he played a detective in Black Klansman, which I haven't seen, but he was nominated for an Oscar for it, so, he must have been really good. He can be aggressive and fierce, as we saw in both Star Wars and Marriage Story. In terms of the Batman voice, that would be up to Driver himself. However, it should not sound like he's about to hack up his lung. Looking at you, Christian Bale. I'm not sure what kind of shape he's in now, but in Last Jedi, he did get pretty swolo. So with rigorous training, he'd certainly get into the proper shape for this role. He also has experience following action choreography, as seen in Force Awakens and the bonus features attached to the Blu-ray of that film. He's also exactly 6'2", which Batman is in the comics. He is absolutely perfect in every way for the character of Batman. And that's it. Those are my picks for Batman and some of his closest allies. I'll be getting to the Robins and some other allies, the GCPD, and most of his rogues gallery later, which will be very fun for me. Anyways, thanks for watching, and keep calm and watch on.